All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll begin with the superintendent's comments.
Good evening. Students and staff in Wake County spent part of last week celebrating our school lunch heroes, also known as the cafeteria professionals who help keep students nourished and healthy every day. May 3rd was the 7th annual National School Lunch Hero Day, created to honor child nutrition employees who prepare meals, adhere to strict nutrition standards, and offer service with a smile in schools throughout the nation. Many of our schools shared tributes to their cafeteria staff on social media, and our HR team visited schools to personally thank employees for helping prepare students for success in the classroom. Tonight, I would like to add my thanks to that chorus of gratitude for these hardworking staff members. Also last week, I had the pleasure of joining several of you for a special commemoration of the past, present, and future at Vandura Springs Elementary. The school community was celebrating both its 60th anniversary and the opening of a new school facility this year. Former Assistant Principal Kathy Blair shared the school's history, and the student chorus wrote and performed a song about their school. It was yet another reminder of the impressive return on investment that public schools provide following support at the polls for our recent building and maintenance program. As the sixth core belief of our strategic plan makes clear, Wake County residents value a strong public school system and will partner to provide the support and resources to fully realize our shared vision, accomplish the mission, and sustain our core beliefs. We are, of course, thankful for the support of our citizens and the Wake County Board of Commissioners, and we pledge to repay that faith with good stewardship of the resources provided to our families. Lastly, tonight, a reminder that this is Teacher Appreciation Week. If you haven't already, I hope you'll find a way to show the teachers in your life just how much they mean to you and your family. I know from experience that teaching is a challenging profession, but it's also an incredibly rewarding one. I shared a message with our staff members yesterday in hopes of reminding all of our teachers just how valuable their work is, not only to their individual students, but to society as a whole. I'll also have the pleasure on Thursday evening of honoring teaching excellence at the annual Teacher of the Year banquet. I'm proud of the dedication, sacrifice, and talent demonstrated daily by nearly 11,000 teachers in the Wake County Public School System. That concludes my comments.
Thank you. I, too, want to celebrate Teacher Appreciation Week. It's that time of year, I know because I'm in it, where the end is in sight. And sometimes as teachers, you know, the stress level goes up. But please know, you impact children every day. We're in the business of impacting lives. So thank you, every teacher, for what you do. Your impact is amazing. Thank you. Been a busy week, or a busy couple weeks. I had the pleasure of interviewing being on the interview panel for the Teacher of the Year finalists. I can tell you we have 10 strong finalists, and so Thursday is going to be a great opportunity to celebrate teaching overall, but particularly to highlight the Teacher of the Year for 2019. We had a very constructive meeting, I believe, with a joint meeting with the Board of Commissioners. We'll talk more about the budget this evening and over the next several weeks, but I do believe that the work that Superintendent Moore and County Manager Ellis have done, as well as various board members, I believe we've got a better level of understanding board to board of the budgetary situation. So I want to thank all the board members for the conversations that they have had, and also the commissioners as we work together to try to address the needs in Wake County. A number of us were on the intercity visit to Nashville with the Raleigh Chamber of Commerce. Superintendent Moore did a phenomenal job chairing a panel on equity in education. There was a lot of very good and rich discussion with respect to how do we build an equitable community in terms of business, entrepreneurship, education, and whatnot. I believe that on all of these trips, we come home learning some things, but also, I will say, very proud of the Wake County Public School System and what we offer to the community. I, too, enjoyed the celebration at Vandura Springs. Coming into the new and dedicating the new facility while celebrating 60 years. Then on Saturday, you got to go to Conn Elementary, where they're celebrating 55 years, and they're starting that process of going to be swinging out next year as their facility gets rebuilt. The contrast between the two schools in terms of the facilities is impressive, and it really is exciting to see the change in just the demeanor of the child walking into a facility that is amazing, with amazing learning spaces, as opposed to one where windows are leaking, air conditioning doesn't work, and so on. And then yesterday had the privilege of joining the celebration at Washington Elementary, where they celebrated their 95th year. And I would, besides the student input, which was a true highlight, it was wonderful to have Michelle Lanier, who is the director of the State of North Carolina Historic Sites. She is the first woman, first African-American to hold that position, but most notably, she is the granddaughter of someone who was a tireless advocate through PTAs to make sure that a high school for African-American children was built here in Raleigh, and that school was Washington, what is now Washington Elementary, was then Washington High School. So it was a real privilege to have Ms. Lanier join that conversation. I think the students felt that they too were part of history, so it was neat to see all that process come together. Thank you. Mr. Sutton.
I think I won't be repetitive in my comments. Most of the things have already been said. I do want to just again recognize the folks at Conn Elementary for a great Saturday program. I'm just looking forward to the new things that are to come, but also an opportunity to reflect on this past. And it was a really great Saturday to see some of the old students, old parents, former teachers, and administrators. Especially Norma Haywood, who I'd heard so much about but had never had the opportunity to meet, Caroline Massengill and others that were there. So it was a really fun opportunity. And then secondly, to just, again, in honor of Teacher Appreciation Week, again, to our 11,000 teachers, just extend my personal appreciation for all that you do, and know that, as Superintendent Moore said, a challenging profession, certainly one of the most rewarding. I can't speak from experience, but do understand the challenges that you face every day, and here to support you 100%. So thank you.
Mr. Haggerty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I didn't bring the flag tonight, but I did want to point out the last time we were here, I said there were no ties in playoff hockey. Since that time, our friends, the Carolina Hurricanes, have not lost a game. And so I will be remaining tieless as we march on toward the Stanley Cup. On a more serious note, last week I did speak to all of you about some very disturbing facts related to youth suicide and about some of the work that I was going to do looking deeper into the issue. I said that we could do more and that we could do more and that we needed to do more. In response, I've shared information with each of you and with the superintendent, materials and information that I'd received from the Jason Foundation, which is dedicated to its work preventing youth suicide. I think this information that I've shared with you is information that we can take out to our PTAs, to our schools, and to our greater community. Briefly, I'll mention some of the things that are available so that you know about them and anybody watching who might be interested in it. One of the most basic things we can do is share resources that are available online. Some of the materials that I shared mention a Friend Asks app. What this is ways that we can share information with other students about how they can identify the warning signs that exist in many youth that are at risk for suicide. This is an app for everyone, not for those who might be contemplating such action, but for their friends, their family, to look for those cases, especially among people that they may not ever suspect. Oftentimes, some of the students, some of the youth that go down this road seem like they're living a perfect life. They are the perfectionists. They are the ones who seem like they have it all together because people don't know what's going on inside their head. Maybe there are clues, maybe there are visible signs. We have to be trained to identify those. There's curriculum for workshops, PTA meetings, after-school programs, anything like that that anybody in our school community might want to organize. I'm interested myself in going out and speaking and leading any of these. I think we have plenty of our people in our community that would like to begin this conversation, but don't know necessarily where to start. Mental health issues are difficult issues to talk about. It can be a difficult conversation to initiate, but there's materials out there that can help us and give us a place to start. The same foundation provides teacher training, professional development, not just good wishes or propaganda, but actual sound medical advice vetted and promoted by the mental health community about how we identify these warning signs and actions we can take to help these youth. This information, this training is made available to, I think, between 16 and 18 states across the country right now that require it as part of their educators' professional development in the public schools. The best part about this, though, is that the foundation makes it available free of charge. In states that have had a Jason's Law pass to require this training, those state legislators haven't even required a fiscal note to measure the fiscal impact because they have seen this is something that can be adopted and provided for from charitable philanthropic sources at no cost to the schools. We're not trying to turn our teachers into counselors. Lord knows they're doing enough counseling as it is on top of their duties already. But we do need to provide early identification of these warning signs. As I mentioned at our last meeting, in 4 or 5 cases, there are warning signs that, if identified, can lead to intervention, and those are lives that can be saved. As I said, best of all, a lot of these resources are free. Whether we act as a school system, whether we act as a PTA, whether we act as individuals, there is something we can all do. We have a responsibility to engage in prevention, not simply reaction. So anyone who's interested in learning more, please feel free to contact me after the meeting, and I'm happy to share these resources with you. Thank you.
Ms. Mathey?
Mr. Haggerty, as you're speaking, I was reminded we do have some schools that partner with Youth Thrive. They sponsor our Stand Up, Speak Out bullying prevention campaign, and in 2018, they did launch a suicide prevention campaign called Wake Up to Hope. So another partner as we go and move through these difficult topics, but very real topics. I want to start with a call to action for everyone. One of my I was reminded that our Track 1 schools will soon be needing proctors for their EOGs. Our schools, whether they're year-round or traditional, are starting the search for EOG proctors. It is a necessary and vital part of this testing process. It is 3 hours in a room with silence. And there are 2 standing breaks in silence and monitored restroom breaks in silence. Hall monitors and proctors are needed. A lot of our students who have IEPs are required to be in a separate setting. So a proctor is needed in every one of those rooms where a child is in a separate setting. So it's not always in a room with 20 kids. It sometimes is in a room with 1 teacher, 1 student, and 1 proctor. This is needed. All of our schools are needing these proctors, and I encourage all of you to get somebody, if not yourself, to sign up and proctor an EOG. and contact your local school. They will be thrilled to have you come and proctor for them. Last week, I volunteered with Wake Up and Read as students at Lincoln Heights got to choose 10 books. So thanks to everyone who donated books, helped sort books, hearing things, not only about different series that they were excited about or characters they were excited about to get, but a lot of, well, I'm getting this book so I can read it to my little sister or to my little cousin, and helping every child add 10 books to their library. And so if you're at a school that participates in Wake Up and Read, you end up with 60 books in your home library, and that is huge to many, many children. Today, along with Superintendent Moore, I got to visit the STEMposium, which is one of my favorite things to see with our business partners. Thank you to Wake Ed Partnership to providing this opportunity for our teachers. 28 businesses participated in this, helping teachers learn about project-based learning, and to see in the STEMposium the culmination of that process and what these students have done, and how it ties with the curriculum to bring about our collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and communication, and really show our businesses what we're doing in Wake County. There were about 100 teachers that participated, and I highly encourage any teacher in Wake County, if you have not looked into it, please do. It is huge. And to talk with the students and to see what they've done. So I had some middle schoolers explain to me how they looked at terrace farming and used Minecraft as a way to better provide irrigation to a terrace farm. Looking at sustainable practices, wind versus solar versus nuclear power. Fifth graders who looked at using their economy and their curriculum and creating an amusement park based in North Carolina. And third graders looking at different sustainability practices they can use throughout their school. And the ownership that these students have is phenomenal. And I just really want to thank Wake Ed Partnership for continuing to provide this program for our Wake County teachers. Last but certainly not least, I want to congratulate bus driver Jennifer Jones of the Apex Friendship District, who won first place in the bus rodeo. The top 8 rodeo.
Wrote it phonetically.
I'm sorry. Yes, rodeo. And so our bus drivers, the top 8 bus drivers get to participate in the state competition. And if this would excite you to become a bus driver for Wake County, you can go to wcpss.net/busjobs for more information. And finally, thank you to all of our teachers for everything that you do. I can't say enough, so I'll end it there. Thank you.
Ms. Johnson-Hostler?
Thank you. I will start with what I said yesterday at the Garner Education Foundation to our teachers, mostly because I got a lot of notes saying they appreciated it. And that is for this, actually for us as well in this sitting at this table, that teachers love the appreciation, but what they like most is knowing that we actually see them as a profession. And literally one of them wrote, "Thank you for saying that. That one line alone will carry me for the rest of the school year." And so I just think it's important for us to note that they do enjoy the trinkets, and that's nice, but quite frankly, just saying they're a profession is something they don't often hear or feel in the state of North Carolina. And so the value added, I definitely underestimated by saying that yesterday, which is the great segue to yesterday. The Garner Education Foundation held their Marjorie Barefoot Awards, which honors a teacher for the Teacher of the Year at each of the schools that sit and reside in the Garner area. Every retiree at each of those schools, which, by the way, Rand Road had 5 retirees, which made me a tad bit nervous for one school to have that many people retiring. And then they also recognize teacher and instructional assistants at each of the schools in the area as well. And they get to walk across the stage, and it was really nice. And I had to remind them that while South Garner is a new school, we kept forgetting them, although they were on the program, but the announcer kept forgetting South Garner High School. But the beauty is the teacher had a great personality, and I told her they could stay on the stage a little bit longer because they deserve to be there. The foundation does quite a few things all year long, but this is kind of their culmination, which they do every year during Teacher Appreciation. And every year they are so kind to either have me open or close. This year they have me close. And the other piece that I think is important is they give school scholarships from the businesses in Garner. So they each, I think they have currently 6 businesses that are given roughly 7 to 8 scholarships for students in the Garner school system. And I told Zach that I would say this because he was the only student who said that he wanted to be a teacher and that his intentions were to move back to Garner to create the same impact on him that he had experienced K-12 in Wake County Public School System. And so that's always something that you want to hear and makes everything we do worth it. I also noted that Garner High School has 2 assistant principals who went to Wake County Public Schools K-12, graduated from Garner High School, and have come back and have not left, and they are assistant principals now. So there is a tradition for people who grow up in the district to return to the district and stay. And so it was great to hear one of our students, actually that was his statement. And all of them talked about the global impact. So I walked away not necessarily hearing the 4 C's, but clearly understanding that they do have embraced productive global citizens, because each of them in their statement spoke to that. And so I think I'd like to remind those of us sitting at this table that our students may not necessarily watch our board meetings, but somehow the work that we are doing is absolutely being shared with them, whether it's through their teachers or their families or just their engagement in our school system. And so it's the thing that makes us keep going. And they also gave scholarships yesterday to our new ELA curriculum for teachers to buy supplemental reading, and that I think was the biggest thing. All the teachers were very glad to get their money for their supplemental reading material for their students. So thanks to Garner Education Foundation for all the work that they do all year long. And one of the things that we ended on was Proctor, please Proctor, which I actually always ask someone to proctor, which, by the way, it's usually my husband. He proctors other people's classes when he's not teaching. I proctored the first 5 years of kindergarten, and it was really difficult. Silence is a problem if you haven't noticed for me. I'll end on that note.
Mr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. I, too, want to express appreciation to the County Commission for a very congenial and productive joint meeting we had, and it's a pleasure to have a positive relationship with our counterparts at the county. Then this board has worked hard to assure that we have that relationship, as that board has, and I appreciate the work on both sides. When we're in a budget situation, it's always there's something that somebody doesn't like, but I just appreciate how we're working together. Teacher Appreciation Week, month. I sat here reflecting back to my time at Sherwood Bates Elementary School. Now the Bates building rolled into the Daniels campus, and Mrs. Stevenson, 3rd grade teacher, had a weekly spelling bee, spelling contest that I would typically win. And the prize for that contest was a Maxwell House instant coffee jar of homemade buttermints. They were good. No, they were good. They were good. But I'm also reminded of my time at Broughton High School with Mr. Southwick leading the instrumental music and program, and Mrs. Freeman leading the choral music program, 2 icons of music education in Wake County, and the rich contribution that an active music program made to that school and to my education. And I do want to talk about one teacher that all 3 of my children had, Bonnie Torgeson, taught 4th grade at Penny Road Elementary School. She has retired long ago. She's written North Carolina curriculum. She has written a couple of different textbooks, and she, I believe, continues to mentor young teachers at Meredith College. And we could use well, I appreciate all teachers, but there's just some that stand out in your mind. And I have to say the Cary Chamber appreciates teachers as well. Next Monday night at the Coca Booth Amphitheater, one teacher from each of 29 schools that are in the broader umbrella of the Cary Chamber will be honored based on having been selected, well, having been nominated by their peers and then selected by a business sponsor. It's open to the public, 6 o'clock, Coca Booth Amphitheater. The teachers and their friends from schools will be there to support them, and no one knows who won yet. So there are 5 nominees from each school. They will all be in attendance to see who the lucky winners of a $1,000 check, on which they have to pay taxes, and a nice plaque would be for the Honor Teacher Program sponsored by the Cary Chamber. Thank you.
Ms. Kushner.
Thank you. Good evening. It has been a busy 2 weeks, so I'll try to hit some highlights. Wanted to thank the Wake PTA Council. They had a great Night of Stars where they honored their volunteers from each school, and I see one of our volunteers of the year, Kathy Cawley, is here. Congratulations to her for her honor. And the Greater Raleigh Chamber trip was wonderful, and one of the big takeaways is that we went to the city of Nashville, and they have unified their municipal and county governments. So in the 70s, they unified their governmental systems, whereas here in Wake County, we unified our school systems. And it was interesting to talk through the differences. I think we unified the right organization. So it showed the power of we were able to see the power of a unified county school system, but also some of the differences in how they have that municipal unification. I could say that the municipalities that were represented were not in favor of that. They like being there, having their own turf, including Morrisville. Right. So. Also wanted to thank Roxy Cash for her leadership in the Imagine Tobacco-Free Community session that the Post Center sponsored last Friday. I'm going to let her speak to that, but it's an alarming trend that I'm glad she's raising those issues. So thanks to Ms. Cash. And the highlight of my Teacher Appreciation Week was last night at the leadership at the Cary Chamber event, where I met my seminal 10th grade English teacher's granddaughter. And she came up to me and made the connection. And I never told Miss Phyllis Sinclair how much she meant to me. And so I've spent and she passed away before I could really do what I needed to do as a student, because she had such an impact on me. So I've talked with her daughters and met her granddaughter, Mary, last night. And that's going to be the highlight of my year, because we can't tell our teachers thank you enough. So to all those parents and students out there, when you come across that, sure, you're Phyllis Sinclair, you thank them, please, because I didn't do it enough, and we don't do that enough. So thanks to Phyllis Sinclair, she knows it now. And I will always, she's always going to be with me.
Ms. Cash.
I also agreed that I think our inner-city trip was a good trip, and the reason is that, well, first of all, my son went to college in Nashville, so it was good to go back to Nashville and see a few of the things, but always comes together that the transit and education are always their immediate challenges, and every time I visit a city, this is what they come up and say: we wish we'd done more in the education as far as integrating our schools and diversity and more in transit. So every time I do a city trip, it motivates me to come back and take a bold stand again for what we need to do for our healthy schools. So that's always helpful to me. The parents in my district and District 1, I've actually been meeting with my parents weekly, sometimes twice a week now, on several subjects, and they are legislative impacts to our public schools, charter school impact in Wake County, and our local budget and how we are funding our schools on our local budget. So we have met every week for the last maybe 2.5 months, and we've now met with almost every one of our elected officials practically that will meet with us. So and we've had a forum in District 1 and 3 together. And so I think I'm trying to do a really good job of educating the parents in our districts on what kind of things we need to do to get funding and where we need to direct our attention to. So I will continue that, and the parents are the ones that are leading that, so they're doing a good job. On April 25th, I went to a really, really great art night at Millbrook High School. There's a head of the art there. She's an art teacher, Jan Johnston, who actually, she actually, you know her, right? She. Oh, really? Okay. She taught all my kids swimming at one point in their life. So yeah. So she is a really good art teacher there, and she had an art night that was unbelievable. I don't know how many local artists were there, and chemists and scientists and artists, and they all showed how they used their talent to do some type of art, and it was a million different things going on. So, and we also did some virtual reality that even I tried, but they did that from the school. The students were doing virtual reality tours. And then again, Ms. Kushner did come to a Post Center hosted event at Wake Med. It was a tobacco-free community symposium, and the Post Center, I'm on the Health Advisory Committee, so it was kind of a lead-in for me to be involved in that. But they were able to get all 4 networks to cover it, which I thought was really good. I was on a panel, but really I was just one of many really, really good speakers. They had 2 panels represented by different aspects of the community, but our students, our high school students, moderated this and spoke and talked to the media, and they were excellent. The students were great. The hosts for that event were actually United Healthcare hosted it, the PTA, Wake County PTA Council hosted it, and of course the Delta Dental. I got free toothbrush, got some free things for that. But and a speaker that night, that morning was a Jim Martin, different Jim Martin, but the Director of Policy and Programs in the North Carolina Division of Public Health, just a part of his credentials. But he was an excellent speaker, and he did a lot with the critical facts and the urgency of the epidemic in our youth today with tobacco and vaping. I want to go to some of these sheets because it really took my breath away. We also, before I say that, we did get an award, which I will maybe have. I'll have Superintendent Moore present that later as one of those great awards you saw for our policy. So our policy on vaping and tobacco really took center stage on that. It was a big deal, along with some other things, that awards that were given by Delta Dental. But I took great pride in what this board did to move that forward, and I talked about how our students actually brought that to us, and we listened, and a couple of those students were there. But the statistics are really alarming, and the vaping, what we need to do is really educate our parents and our students with their peers, of course, about how vaping is extremely dangerous, very dangerous, more dangerous than tobacco is. And at 5 years ago, we were at an all-time low in our nation for tobacco and cigarette smoking, and, you know, the ads were taken off. There was campaigns, no more of the Marlboro ads and things. And now, when you look at the advertising going on for the Juul and the vaping and all those things that parents don't realize look like flash drives, teachers have a hard time looking at and noticing it. Students have over 17,000 flavors of vaping, and all of this money going into campaigns, but every pod is more than a package of cigarettes. And so the students just don't understand that, and we know from our own experiences in Wake County that vaping leads to drug abuse, and drug abuse leads to overdosing, and so vaping is not just a great pastime. So we've got to get serious. But 5 years ago, we were at all-time low in our students, and today there's a 894% increase in our high schools on the use of tobacco and nicotine. And it's all because of the products, the vaping products. So we have to take care of that. So we will continue to work on that. I have to give kudos to Frank Eagles. He was there, Frank Eagles, but there's been a lot of tobacco-free community movement, and Roseville is leading the way. And so we had an opportunity, I don't know where I put that, but we had an opportunity to look at all the rules and regulations that have been put in by the city council, and so we can see which ones do not have tobacco-free and which ones do not have nicotine-free, which ones do, but so they've led the way there. So he was on one of the panels, but I have to give him kudos for that. And that's about it. I just wanted to get, teacher appreciation is a big deal. And, I love the teachers of my 4 kids and continue to appreciate what they do. But thank you for saying what you said, Ms. Kushner. I don't think we thank our teachers enough. We need to do that.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. With 28 schools in District 1, I feel like I could talk for 30 minutes, literally, about all of the things that have happened over the last 2 weeks, because these schools are just doing amazing things to engage their students and the communities around their schools. But I will focus on just a few. I will save you the 30-minute speech. Knightdale High School of Collaborative Design, this is very exciting. Their golf team, their men's golf team, for the first time ever, will be representing their school in the 4A state championship in Pinehurst. So that is super exciting for them. Forestville Road Elementary School hosted the first LEGO League robotics competition, and they actually won the elementary division. So really exciting for Forestville Road Elementary. Board Member Mahaffey had mentioned she had volunteered for the Wake Up and Read, so I thought I would do the same thing at Wakelawn, because Wakelawn Elementary is one of our schools. But they were so enthusiastic. I was going to volunteer on Thursday, and they were so enthusiastic that all the kids have their books. So they finished it really fast today. So, but that's just wonderful to see how enthusiastic these children are, as she said, to take these books home. And thank you so much to Wake Up and Read for all that you do to address the literacy crisis that we have. Lots of proms, lots of musicals going on. I know Heritage High School still has their Mamma Mia going on. Rollsville had Beauty and the Beast recently, and Wendell Middle School had Lion King. And I know I'm probably missing a few, but those were they just looked phenomenal. The PTA event was a wonderful, that was actually my first time to visit the Poe Center, and I look forward to going back and learning more about the programs that they offer. But it was just so fantastic to have the opportunity to celebrate parent volunteers, because our schools could not survive without the active members in our PTAs, and they really are there to serve every child in those schools. Teacher Appreciation Week, I do know firsthand as well what it takes to be a teacher, but I also want to acknowledge how much the teaching profession has changed and just how much more we expect from our teachers, and so many changes to the field of education, and these professionals wake up every single day, and they know the hardships. They know going into it that they are not going to be retiring on a yacht, but they look into the eyes of their students, and I know they recommit themselves to that career every day. And I just want to say thank you so much to all of our teachers, and for sticking through all of these changes that have occurred to the profession. And it is also Nurses Week this week, and we love our school nurses as well. They do phenomenal work in our schools, and hopefully we can have more of them in our schools, but we do. I just wanted to shout out to nurses, and I wanted to take just one last thing to say thank you to the parents who are here advocating for their children. I know that I'm just speaking for myself. I know that you have felt that your voices aren't being heard. And I want to, I've read every single email I've had conversations, and I want to thank you for doing what you should do for your children, and that's to advocate. We may not always be on the same page and may not always be in the same agreement, but I did just want to acknowledge that I know that you're here advocating for your children because they're the most important people in your lives. But I just wanted to acknowledge that because I know that my colleagues share the passion of wanting to help provide the best opportunity for your children as well. So thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. That concludes the board member comments. Public comment coming up. The next thing we need to do is approve the agenda. Before we approve the agenda, I want to note that we will pull from the action agenda the acting upon board policy 4310, the honor code. That will be coming back to a later board meeting based on our discussion at work session. With that, do I hear a motion to approve the revised agenda?
Move approval of the meeting agenda as revised.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The agenda is approved. It is now time for public comment. Citizens who sign up to address the board during public comment will be called upon in priority order. First for items on the agenda, and then for items not on the agenda. Each individual speaker will be allowed 3 minutes for remarks. Specific personnel or student matters are not appropriate for this public comment setting, but may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. The first speaker is Anthony Moreno. When you start talking.
In response to Mr. Dillard and 600 parents concerned about MVP math program, firstly, it needs to be said that MVP was designed to follow the Common Core standards. These standards were adopted by North Carolina late for federal monetary incentive. Due to many unsatisfied teachers, students, and parents, these standards were revised, revisited, and in the end rejected by the state. In this time where these standards were adopted and rejected, textbooks were no longer aligned to the standards, and teaching mathematics as was done while we or you were in school was not possible, given the expectations placed on schools and teachers. Wake County has decided to use MVP as the curriculum and textbook for high school math courses. And due to North Carolina having changed its standards, Wake County has had to adjust MVP curriculum and text to match the standards of the state. This is a very long and difficult process. As a teacher, I have been through weeks of training in learning how to implement this curriculum. I've seen my colleagues look at this and struggle. I have seen others dedicated to the curriculum, but missing the mark by not giving enough practice. We have been encouraged to supplement notes and practice as we feel is needed. If teachers aren't doing this, there's a level of misunderstanding, just like there was with the Common Core standards. I personally feel like this is our best bet, and there's so much work around the state being done to adjust this each year to make it the best suited to teach our students. It is the first real textbook we have been able to use in years. It's a relief to have something. Every year for the past 6 years I've been teaching, I've had to create a curriculum from scratch because of the changing standards and the curriculum. MVP has made it to where I can actually focus on teaching. When adjustments are made to MVP, nothing is changed in the standards. Our job as teachers is not bound down by MVP. MVP is just a guide like the textbook was. It has been said before in all the trainings I've attended. If we throw out MVP, there isn't anything to replace it. We can't go back to what we used to have because the standards have changed, and there isn't a textbook that will provide appropriate curriculum to teach the way we did when I was a kid. It's too early to change this process. It would be like cutting open a cocoon because we want the butterfly results immediately. From the teacher's side and the school administrator's side, I know we are working as hard as possible to make make sure our students, including my kids as a parent, are college and career ready despite the challenge of the state. Change always takes time and it is impossible to please everyone. I know with all my heart this is the right decision for our state and students. This is a time we need to rally together and support each other, not divide ourselves. We're all doing the best we can to cope with these changes, but the answer is not more change to the system, it is change and understanding in ourselves.
Kimberly Wood.
That was a real nice declaration. My name is Kimberly Wood, a parent of a junior and a freshman at Apex Friendship, and I adamantly disagreed with what was just stated right now. I helped elect all of you, especially Lindsay, to this school board, and I would hope that you would do your job by using data-driven information to make decisions about what is best for our students. However, I am here because you have not succeeded in this endeavor. I firmly believe that by implementing MVP math, you have chosen poorly, and you have not done your job to vet a curriculum properly. Who around here doesn't want equity, to close the achievement gap, to have students grapple, to make students think critically, and find more social justice? I do. But you've chosen MVP math, which has hijacked those terms, wrapped them up in a pretty package, and you ended up with something that looks good on the outside but is a mess on the inside. On the surface, MVP math contains these characteristics that we want our students to be exposed to, and it neglects the very thing it is supposed to do, teach math. You have utterly rejected the data that is available in school districts that have implemented this discovery math. So some quick data, in case you haven't done your research, because I have. In Berkeley, California, currently 46 students in high school are below grade level in math. Among economically disadvantaged, Hispanic, and African American students, that percentage increases to 84% below grade level. Another school district is Modesto High, that has similar but worse numbers. That is not equitable, and that is not closing the achievement gap. This is not a trend that we want here in our school district. And if you need others, you can look at Seattle, Washington, Alpine School, which is the founding place of MVP, or you can go to outside the U.S. to Ontario, Canada, where they are still struggling with this. The proof is in the pudding, and the pudding tastes awful. The key ingredients, foundational knowledge, are left out, and we simply should not have to swallow this any longer. If you follow the proof, follow the data, you will understand that MVP is not meeting our standards. Wrestling over problems together, working out different methods, comparing approaches does not make everyone an active participant. As much as you would like to think so, that's not how it works with learning a new math concept. It sounds good, and it might work well in some styles of math, but it's not working with fundamentals. And who needs fundamentals if we can all work together and figure it out? Would you like to try that with driver's ed? All work together and figure that out? How about sex ed? Oh. Having a curriculum that is robbing teachers of teaching and taking away direct instruction first creates havoc and chaos in the classroom, and it does not create a growth mindset. Yeah.
Terry Coleman.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I, too, am here to speak about my concern for MVP math. I am a former high school math teacher in Fairfax County, Virginia, and in Wake County. I currently work as a principal statistical programmer, which without my extensive knowledge of higher level mathematics and education, I would never have been qualified for. I have 2 children currently taking high school math, one online in 8th grade and one taking MVP. My one child that has had MVP math earned decent grades in his class, but with much outside help to build the solid foundation that is lacking in MVP. As a parent who can recognize the knowledge actually gained from the MVP math program and who is trained to decipher whether content is effective or not, I am extremely concerned about what the future will hold for my children and those in our county. The level of knowledge gained, the lack of clear objectives, the lack of solid foundation that is being built for these students is not preparing them for the rigor of higher level math classes. If you have been following the Facebook page organized for parents whose children are taking MVP in this county, There has been much sound evidence and research shown that MVP curriculum is very questionable in its worth. I question why this county would not want to strive to be one of the best in the nation and look to some of the top-rated schools and counties and see what they are using for their math programs. A strong math curriculum is very important. Seek advice from actual math educators that are currently in the classroom, those on the front lines on this matter, and research what the top-rated counties and schools are doing. The best educators I have ever encountered are ones that set their pride aside, want more than anything to do what is right rather than to be right, are willing to admit they do not know everything, and step back and evaluate what is working and what is not working. MVP is a mess. It is doing a disservice to the students and is best only as a supplement material in the classroom, not the main tool. And as the teacher that stated, adding in all of it is other stuff makes it work. I encourage you as leaders in our county to step back and reevaluate MVP. The county needs a curriculum that builds a solid math foundation and one that helps both those weak and strong in math grow. The parents that have been working so hard on bringing this to your attention have moved well beyond individual student struggles to the real issue, the curriculum, and I applaud them for their efforts. I would love to applaud you on your honest investigation into this curriculum and the election of a strong math curriculum that renders high-quality education for the students. Thank you.
Carrie Blay.
May I hand you something? Hello again. Am I ready? I was a bright student in high school. When I hit Algebra 2, it was like hitting a brick wall at full speed, and I could not wrap my brain around that subject. I felt defeated and tired of getting bad grades and went to tutoring 3 days a week during my lunch hour. My teacher knew that I wanted to succeed. When I left class one day after a test, he stopped me and asked me how I did. And I couldn't even look him in the eyes. I just said, not good. He told me that that was the most ridiculous thing he had ever heard, that every single kid should know exactly what their grade is on a math test when they leave that room. This is not a subject, this is a skill. He said, I have given you all the tools you need to succeed already. I have seen you practice. I have looked at the way you see math. I've watched you check your work. You get it. And no one can ever take that away from you, not even me. He had me check my answers and grade my paper right in front of him. I caught 4 mistakes and made my first A in math class that year. He was right, do you understand? To this day, I may not love math, but I respect it. And what he said changed my whole academic career. I never dreamed that there would be a way to actually take math away from students like I have seen over the past 3 years. What we have lost in this room and in the curriculum planning is empathy. We have lost our ability to remember a time when these concepts were foreign to us, and we have replaced that empathy with bigger words, such as equity and learning gaps and rigor and discourse. But you cannot make something out of nothing. The sheet I handed you is a modest summary of the topics that middle school and Math 1 students are expected to learn and master. The amount of tangible content that we provide Wake County students on these subjects is 0. Every topic on these sheets, our children have no visual record of. They are expected to remember all of that knowledge without review. Ms. Mahaffey and Ms. Moore, you came to Holly Grove Middle School to present the Verizon Award during an assembly the day after I spoke at this meeting. My son rushed off the bus that afternoon to tell me how the board members were at his school, and he Googled you. He said, Mom, I know they were here for the Verizon thing, but maybe after you talk to them at the meeting, they're going to talk about math, too. They were standing right beside my principal, and maybe they're going to help us right now. He said, good job, Mom. He thinks that you're going to come and help him because I made a promise. And I need you to see behind that curtain because this is not about angry parents. These kids are watching you, and they're waiting. And they don't have the voices to tell you this.
They don't understand why you don't understand. It's my third time speaking to you, and I'm sad that it has taken this long. And I'll be sad at every meeting as I have to stand here and ask for the most basic resources.
Blaine Dillard.
It's come to my attention that there still may be a perception that MVP issues are mainly isolated to Green Hope High School. This could not be further from the truth. Please allow me to set the record straight. First of all, I do admit that Green Hope is ground zero for MVP problems. Why? Could it be that Green Hope was chosen as the location of the Triangle High Five School Math Summit held in July 2015, which included MVP's Teach Like an MVP training? This was a full year before the RFP process started, seemingly giving MVP a one-year advantage over the competition. Or maybe the extra attention has been given to Green Hope to make sure it's following MVP with fidelity. Indeed, Green Hope has had the most material objections filed from parents, with at least 8. Mr. Fletcher, since Green Hope is in your district, I wonder if you're aware of that, and if you've reached out to those parents and families to understand more about their complaints. Dr. Martin, you've had parents and complaints from Athens Drive, Middle Creek High, and as well as Westlake Middle who filed complaints. Ms. Kushner, you have one from Sanderson. Ms. Mahaffey, you have 3 complaints from different schools: Apex Friendship, Fuquay Varina High, and Holly Grove Middle. Ms. Scott, you have one from Wake Forest High. There may be others that I'm not aware of. Speaking of Wake Forest High, what's going on there in this past month? Central seems to have sent someone there to sit in on classes to observe their MVP compliance. Some teachers were not following MVP to a T and were using their own material to supplement before the MVP task and making sure students were learning. That is a big no-no. And guess what? Since those MVP course corrections, student performance on test is, guess what, declining. Some teachers report more than 10 to 15 point decline in test averages just in the last month. We're starting to get more complaints on our Facebook group about MVP problems at Wake Forest. Speaking of our Facebook group, I encourage you board members to familiarize yourself with the 360 plus posts and over 4,700 comments and complaints about MVP all over the county. Out of our 1,000 members, here are the top hometowns represented. Fuquay, 30 members. Holly Springs, 83. Wake Forest, 99. Apex, 145. Raleigh, 213. Cary, 372. Where's my sign? So why do we sometimes hear these pockets of MVP complaints while others hear broad cases of MVP is not so bad? My theory is explained by the recent Wake Forest observations. When MVP is used lightly and highly supplemented, it's not too bad, it's tolerable, maybe not as good as before, but students learn enough to get by. And ironically, where it produces the most problems and least performance is where it's used as directed, just like cigarettes.
Margaret Borden.
Hi. My name is Margaret Borden. I'm a Math 2 teacher at Knightdale High School. So thanks, Ms. Scott, for that shout out. Appreciate it. I'm actually here to speak in favor of the MVP math curriculum. This is my second semester teaching it. And I've had some really great results. I've been at Knightdale for 2.5 years, graduated from NC State right before starting there. So I have been in the midst of this task-based revolution in math. I've been trained with the NCTM principles. I have been put through the task-based learning training. And at NC State, they would tell us, you want to find low floor, high ceiling tasks where all students can access it and they can go farther and beyond, and you can push them, and you've got your high students and your low students that can all reach this material. But we don't have any tasks for you. You have to either make them yourself or find them online. There's lots of resources, but you have to prepare to teach your students every single day on every single standard, and we only have tasks for some standards. So good luck. And so I went into Knightdale. I took all the materials that the people gave me there, did not do any task-based learning, watched retention dip. Engagement was terrible. I had a lot of students that I called my extreme non-doers, and I was just constantly waking them up. It was a very frustrating experience. And then MVP came, and like the other teachers said, it felt like a relief. Finally, I was able to have well-designed tasks that I could teach from. I could walk in every day prepared with a task that I knew all my students could access at a low floor, and I could pull them up to a high ceiling at some point in the day. I have like 97% engagement right now. My students mathematically reason so well. They are speaking with each other. They have confidence in their math skills. They no longer ask me to come over and confirm if they've done it right, because they have 5 other ways to confirm it, and they have their colleagues in their mathematical learning to confirm it. And I've just seen this incredible growth with them. In addition, I've seen growth in my test scores. So, we like to talk about that kind of data. I don't have the exact numbers with you tonight, unfortunately, but I really have seen a growth in my students being able to reason mathematically and then go perform on their tests, especially the big one at the end. Now, I do give my students a couple opportunities to practice it and learn it, because the MVP curriculum provides that spiraling, and so my students are much better at completing the square now than they were 4 weeks ago when we first learned it. And they have a little bit of learning to do on square roots, which is what we took our test on today. But I know in a couple weeks, as we're getting ready for that final exam, they're going to have seen that a couple more times. They're going to have gotten better at it, and they're going to have practiced it and been ready for it. So I'm here to ask you, please, dear God, don't make me learn another curriculum. Just let me keep learning how to teach better, serving my students and practicing with them. Thank you.
Laura Tingelstad.
Thank you all for your time tonight. So I don't really know where to begin. I feel like a parent who has come back from a wonderful getaway to find the house in complete disarray. Your social media paints a very positive picture, but like most things in social media, it does not paint the true picture. Let's begin with MVP. You've spent over $1 million on a free program. This includes printing the individual workbooks, ongoing, teacher training, ongoing, and buying of online tutorial access for teachers and students. This does not include the $450,000 in consultation fees. Over $100 million for a failing program that is wasteful for the environment and the classroom. Next, whether you want to concede this or not, there is now a full-blown MVP epidemic in Wake County. You went from few complaints, doesn't seem to be a system-wide problem, to 33 schools being represented by over 600 people in 2 months. And you can read numerous stories on the MVP Facebook page, which currently has over 1,000 members. This is an extremely transparent group. So if you have not checked it out, I urge you to do so. It's chock full of helpful information, and you know what else? Resources on how to help your child attempt to understand the missing links in MVP. This is what help and support looks like. It is what education be doing for our children. Superintendent Moore, your position prior to this one was focused on rolling out new curriculum, so I'm quite shocked you have not been more front and center in this debacle. Do you know my child's teacher did not even know what MVP stood for during the Meet the Teacher in September? That tells me there was not enough time to know what they were going to be doing with this curriculum. There were not enough workbooks for every student. There were missing pages and information in the workbooks, so teachers were supplementing or creating materials on their own to fill the void. Unless you had a novice teacher, then they were just trusting the workbook, which would ultimately lead to being tested on material that was not introduced, never mind covered in class. In the same vein, you had some schools teaching MVP with supplementation. You had some schools teaching straight up MVP, and you had some who had gone rogue and returned to textbooks and direct instruction. The whole point of this curriculum was so that all schools are teaching the exact same thing at the exact same time, except they aren't, because there's no clear instructions from the leaders on how to implement this curriculum. And when parents raised concerns, the board threw teachers under the bus and said they must not be teaching it right, and MVP refused itself to comment how teachers implement the curriculum in the classroom. Wow. So I am quite curious if any of you have actually had a conversation with these kids who are going through MVP right now. kids who have severe anxiety attacks, kids who are cutting, kids who are contemplating suicide because they feel stupid and helpless and they never did before. ESL kids who cannot read at a second grade level but are expected to read paragraphs in math class and discover answers in a language that cannot speak. You let teachers continue, I'm going to continue.
The teachers didn't. I did not let teachers continue. The time expired.
When I was here for Red for Ed, every single teacher went over and you let them speak, so I'm going to continue.
Your time has expired.
We have kids
Please
no
sit down.
electricity at home, much less computer access. You're angry at the growth of homeschoolers, private and charter schools. They teach 45-minute classes. They teach classical education. They don't have SEL, and they don't have MVP. Thank you for your time.
Nick Polsinelli.
All right. Can I speak? My name is Nick Polsinelli. I'm a student at Green Hope High School and a part of MVP Math 3. This program has been one of the worst experiences of my jubilant and fickle 16-year-old life. I was once an A student and now I'm a D student, but most importantly, I'm not learning anything because of this weird and slightly sloppy program. As Kimberly said, the proof is in the pudding and the pudding ain't good. You people sitting in your high chairs and drinking coffee are making decisions for people you can't even understand. The people who have designed this program need to reconsider their life choices. The teacher sitting behind me says her numbers have improved. Let me tell you the truth. She doesn't have her numbers with her tonight because the numbers suck. I was once a young lad living my humble life, nay-naying at every problem that came my way. Because of the PTSD I have faced due to this program, I recently cried muddled in puddles of homework that you have been forsaken upon me. If you cared about the mental health and suicide rates of students, you would get a soul and rid of this blasphemous program. I'm begging of you, begging and praying, that you reconsider your choices and #abolish MVP and bring back the basics. We need to stand up to North Carolina Governor Lieutenant Grafton Potter. Thank you for your time. We are the revolution.
That concludes public comment.
Consent agenda as listed.
Second.
We have a motion and a second with respect to the consent agenda. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The consent agenda has been approved. The first action item is approval of, discussion and voting on the Board of Education's proposed budget for 2019-2020. Mr. Nieder will be presenting.
Good evening, Chair Martin, members of the board, and Superintendent Moore. The superintendent's proposed budget for 2019-2020 was presented to you on April 2nd. Seems a little bit longer. Since then, you've held 3 board work sessions asking questions about the budget and discussing it. You've held a public hearing on the proposed budget, and you've held a joint boards meeting between the Board of Education and the Board of Commissioners, receiving a presentation on the budget and having the opportunity for both boards to have discussion and ask questions about the budget. At your most recent work session today, we reviewed 3 recommended adjustments to the superintendent's proposed budget. We also reviewed those 3 adjustments with you at your last work session. That brings us to tonight, where we bring you the superintendent's proposed budget along with those 3 recommendations for adjustment for your consideration of approval as the board's proposed 2019-2020 budget. Before I ask for your consideration of approval and ask if you have any additional questions, I do want to make you aware of one thing. We did discover since your work session and now, I don't really want to call it an error, but it's something that should have been added to that list of adjustments that was not added. It does not change those 3 adjustments or anything about them. But since the superintendent's proposed budget came out, we received an additional almost $500,000 from the county, from a reserve from ADM. That needed to show as an adjustment as well. It does not change the 3 adjustments we're recommending. It just aligns our total recommended county appropriation for next year with this year, the proposed budget, and the 3 adjustments. Be glad to answer any questions and ask for your consideration of approval.
Well, and just for clarification, that $500,000 was the adjustment based on the charter numbers, is that correct? Or is it the enrollment? But the enrollment growth it had been held back.
Yes.
And that enrollment growth was primarily a charter.
It was based. It was an enrollment growth number held back based on Wake County growth.
All right, just clarification. Mr. Sutton?
Move for approval of the Board of Education's proposed budget for the 1920 fiscal year.
And second. We have a motion and a second. The floor is open for discussion.
Mr. Nader, Dr. Martin.
Yes.
We're in a precarious situation as a school board, and that we're the ones who have to adopt our budget first. We have no tools by which to raise the revenue to support this budget. We're completely dependent upon the state primarily, then the county, and at some time toward Christmas, the feds will get around to adopting their next budget, which we expect might send some money to us for programs that they expect us to operate. So there have been a couple of budgets introduced in the legislature at this point. Is there anything concrete that you can speak to about potential state funding as we consider adopting this interim budget? Our budget request.
Mr. Fletcher, I wish I could say yes, but I cannot at this point from the state, and it's not unique to just this year. It's unique to the dynamics that you've begun to describe. We've seen the governor's proposed budget. We've seen the state House's proposed budget. We've not seen the Senate's proposed budget, and from the Senate, it will go to some kind of joint conference committee to resolve. And so I would say at this point, when we gave you the House update in your board work session this afternoon, I don't think a final budget will look much like that. Maybe some parts of it, but at best some parts of it.
Thank you.
Questions?
Chair Martin, if we could, to piggyback on that, given that we've in the past done an interim budget by the end of June and then passed a final budget sometime in the fall, how would that affect the 4 schools that are opening July 1 if we're not able to finalize a budget?
The 4 new schools coming online, if the board does adopt an interim budget, which I think is likely that staff will ask you to do, the interim budget allows for the normal and basic operating expenses. The primary funding associated with those schools, as far as the operating expenses, are local funding. We will at that point know what the local funding is for the coming year. The county will approve, the Board of Commissioners will approve a budget. They're targeted to do it at their, I believe, their first June meeting. In my 12, 13 years here, I've never seen them not adopt the budget before the end of the fiscal year, so I don't have any concern there. We can make adjustments at that point within what we do know, if necessary, to allow those 4 schools to open. We do know this as well. With a reasonable amount of certainty. The state is funding student growth. There's no legislation been introduced at this point that would say the state is not going to continue to fund student growth. There was an initiative, I think, a couple years ago where it was not funding growth, but that would be a concern if it was out there, but it's not.
Thank you, and I do hope that we'll continue in the leadership of our Finance Committee to revisit this budget and not just have it so that it can be a living document throughout the year.
Ms. Cash?
Well, first of all, I do want to say that I feel like I do like the fact that the way the budget has come about just is clear. It seems like it's clear. It gives us a very clear picture of what we need to do with our legislature, how we need to work together with the county commissioners to get the funding that we need to run our schools in Wake County. I do also think that the county commissioners have appreciated the multi-tiered approach as far as the big items so that we can get a really clear target of where we're going and take care of the things that have been bothering us for a long period of time. So I appreciate that in this budget, and I thank you for that. And I think the other thing that we need to do as a board is continue to work with the commissioners. We still have a ways to go to come to a consensus of where we're going to be, but I want us also, as we move forward with our budget, like you say, it's kind of a living document, that we do, in this multi-tiered process that we've embarked upon, that we do become very accountable for that with our funding sources, so that if we say we're going to go over 5 years with these different items, that we continue to do that and keep some checkpoints in place. But thank you very much. Great budget.
This being my first time going through the budget process, I did also want to thank Superintendent Moore and all of the individuals who have put this together in a clear way to help understand. And I did want to acknowledge for those Eastern Wake families who may have felt a little bit of a shock when they saw the school support model, as it was a temporary program, but that does look like a big cut to a part of the county that is sensitive. And I wanted to acknowledge that I'm really pleased with the conversations that I've had, that attention is still going to be given to that school, and they are going to receive support, and that we are embracing that school and wanting them to move forward. And I just wanted to acknowledge that for anyone who may have read that and wondered why I didn't say anything, and so this is me saying that. But again, thank you for clarifying the entire process for us.
Ms. Snell?
I've been biting my tongue through this whole process. I understand, and Mr. Nieder, you've done a good job of explaining the budget process to us, and my colleagues are aware of this as well, but just in the public discussion, the fact that we're required by state law to pass a budget by May 15th, prior to the adoption of a county budget, but more importantly, prior to the adoption of a state budget, when the state budget is supposed to be the source of our primary education funding and operating needs, makes this just a monumental task, to use polite language. It's like asking a family to prepare a budget without knowing what your paycheck is. And so we can see actions in the legislature, we can see actions at the county level in trying to prepare a responsible budget without knowing what we're going to be required to do by the state, with new proposals coming down all of the time about what we're going to be required to teach, how many kids we can or cannot have in class. Trying to make those numbers work, I think all we can do is simply present our needs as we've measured them as best we can. And I want to commend the staff and the leadership for the approach this year of presenting our needs in a multi-year plan. Because if we can assess what those needs are, if we can assess the growth that we'll have, if we can assess what the impacts of legislation right now looks like, we can make our ask. And if we're not funded to that level, everyone will know what we'll need to come back and ask for the following year and the year after that. I get that there is a sticker shock associated with our needs. but that's the result of underfunding those needs over the years. And if our educational infrastructure hasn't kept up with our growth, those needs are going to continue year after year. And so I think the best thing we can do is just honestly say what those needs are, hope that the legislature will recognize those needs, and then hope that the county can do what it can. And I just thank you all for your advocacy in this process and preparing this budget for us.
I just add on to amplify what my colleague has just shared, is that the North Carolina Constitution expects the state to fund the operations of the schools. They consistently underfund what's necessary to have talented teachers in the classroom, to have their support staff, to have the tools necessary, including classroom supplies and curriculum and instructional resources. It's consistently underfunded. The ratio between funding per student this year to funding in 10 years ago is unspeakable. The issue is not with the county. The issue is with the state, and an annual reduction in the contribution of the state to what the Constitution says is a state-operated school district, a state-funded operation of the schools. And so, I'll repeat, more than 100 school districts have gotten county property taxes levied in order to hire necessary personnel. That should be a state expense. More than 100 school districts have gotten county property taxes levied in order to have funding to increase compensation to their employees so they'll stay in their school districts. That is, both of those are strong indicators to me, and should be to anyone in the public, that the state is not properly funding our schools. And so while we will have discussions with the county, and the county manager reached his budget yesterday, the real issue for us as a community is to convince the legislature to put the right kind of resources into what is their constitutional responsibility to provide the operating funding for our schools.
Ms. Mappy?
Mr. Fletcher, you just reminded me that we are now in year 21 since the Leandro decision as well.
I just want to finish also my one comment. I would feel bad if I left this. Your point is so well taken, of course, how we feel about the legislature not funding us. And I think what I want to thank you, your department, Mr. Nieder, as well as like Mark Winters, Terry Kimsey, Tim Simmons, his department, Superintendent Moore. Thank you for coming to so many meetings in our public and explaining just what we are not getting from our legislature and the things that we need to as constituency. We're elected officials, so they don't always listen to us like they do our constituency, but I have to say that all those people that have been out in my area have just ignited a fire, I have to say. So I will continue to bring you out as speakers in my district and hopefully all the districts, and hopefully that they will take a voice to the legislature as well as our teachers. Kristen Beller's here. Thank you so much. And so parents, families, and teachers together will start to talk to our legislators. But thank you.
Ms. Johnson-Hustler?
Thank you, Ms. Cashin. To that point, one of the things that, and my BAC is the last one they're doing, so thank you. We're looking forward to it, to your point, Ms. Cash. But one of the things I'll say, and just talking to community members, my personal friends, parents, is I think one of the things that we're also responsible for is distinguishing how we're funded. So, Mr. Fletcher, I think that was a really good education that you just gave in terms of how we are supposed to be funded by the state. We saw this show up on the data from the bond, and I'm still hearing it from people saying, well, I don't understand. Didn't you get bond? And so I think it's important. I just want to draw out that when we talk about levying property taxes, there are two different things. We're talking about our bond referendum, that's our capital or building program, but then we're also talking about the request that we currently will have once we release our budget to the county. And I think I can speak for myself coming to the school board, there's some assumptions that the public can distinguish all of those differences. And so I think it's just important to draw that out, that we have to keep reminding the public that we need your support across the board. And so when we're asking and talking about our budget 2 times a year, those are 2 different funding pots of money that we're talking about, which absolutely do still impact our citizens and our homeowners and our tax base in Wake County. And the one thing that I've never heard anyone say, whether those are people who have kids or not, is we just want to understand so we can support you. And so to your point, Ms. Cash, I think people are beginning to be more ignited because they're understanding the difference, and the more that we can contribute to correcting the narrative around our funding, the better we offer in our county. So thanks the staff and our board members who continue to create those distinctions for our community.
So before us is a budget. Somewhat as Mr. Fletcher has noted, I think it's important to reinforce that while at this time, we have to make a decision and hand the budget to the county, this budget reflects a expectation of appropriation of $1,032,546,143 to the state of North Carolina. Needs to be more, but we are expecting that. And we've tried in this year to not just talk about legislative mandates, but talk about legislative impacts. I want to recognize that we're hoping for good salary increases. Those are going to will have a local impact. That's a local impact that we are willing to take to make sure there is an appropriate supplement. At the same time, the change to the retirement formula, change to the formula for the health plan, these are legislative impacts that absolutely should be covered by the state. We're expecting in that contribution from the state about $5 million for social and emotional support. Things like counselors, social workers, nurses. These expectations are baked into this budget, and so, well, like I say, we frequently focus on the county issues. I want to make it clear that this budget is also laying out expectations for the state. The local appropriation, we are asking for $518,846,265. I want to make clear in that ask that is the total ask for the local appropriation for all students in Wake County. That is not the ask for Wake County public school students. We are, as a board, we are charged with asking not only for the needs of Wake County public school students, but also for the needs for their charter school students. We're not going to know exactly what that number is, but it's going to be roughly 8.7% of this ask. That means only 91.3 cents of every local dollar requested can be used for Wake County public schools. Thinking about the magnitude, we're talking about between $40 and $45 million. As a point of reference, I had a chance to look through the presentation of the manager's budget, the county manager's budget last night, and discovered that the entire local funding to Wake Tech is about $26 million. So we're spending more than 1.75 times the amount that we pay to Wake Tech on charter schools in Wake County. We must ask for that. That's our statutory obligation. But this ask, I just need to be clear, is around 470-ish million for the Wake County public schools and the 40 to 45 million for charter schools. Clearly, our ask is higher than what appeared in the manager's budget, and we need to acknowledge that. That means we need to have continued conversations with our colleagues on the Board of Commissioners. We've had constructive conversations so far, and I do hope those continue. I was very pleased to see in the county manager's budget that they were looking for a 3% raise for all county staff. As we've noted, both with respect to county and state regulations, our Wake County employees, non-certified staff, do not fall under that umbrella. Nevertheless, in our budget ask, we started with an assumption of a state contribution of about a 1.5% raise for our non-certified staff, whether that was based on the governor's budget, and the House has come in at only about 1%. In addition, one of our new initiatives said we want to begin to address these issues for our lowest paid employees. That number is about comparable. So just for putting things into perspective, if we get that raise from the state and have the funds available from local appropriation to do what we're asking to do, we may be able to get about on par with that 3%. This is one of the issues that I think we need to continue in our conversation because we want to support their goal for all Wake County Public School employees as well. The last thing I'll note, just comparing the two budgets, from what I saw, I was struck that the county talked about having 10,000 devices and 17,000 user accounts, thus needing $1.7 million for improved IT security. I was struck by that because, as you'll note in our budget, over the last 5 years, we've increased the number of devices by 52,000. And our current total number of devices, at least as listed in our document, is 162,000 devices. So that's more than 16 times the number of devices in the Wake County Public Schools than are in the county altogether. The county notes that they have 17,000 user accounts. Wake County Public Schools have 161,000 students. Each has a user account. Over 20,000 employees. Each has a user account. So my point here in sharing the magnitude is it's substantially different. We've asked for, in our budget, $93,000 for a security specialist and $603,000 for IT support. So our ask for a very differential impact is only $696,000. I raise those issues just to note that we want to support the initiatives that we see in the county. And we want to make sure that we can do the same kinds of things that they are noting our needs in their budget as well. Therefore, I think it's completely appropriate that we do ask for this full ask, even though it is about $11 to $12 million more than was in the county manager's budget. And I think that behooves us to continue to have this conversation with our commissioners because the needs that have been articulated, as we've all noted, are very real needs to support what goes on in our classrooms every day in the Wake County Public Schools. With everyone having a chance to make comment, I will now ask for the vote. All those in favor of adopting this budget now as the board's budget, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. The budget is passed. Thank you. All right, our further action item has been pulled. We are now ready to have a motion to go into closed session.
Move to consider confidential personnel, move to go into closed session to consider confidential personnel information protected under GS 143-318.11 A1, A3, and A6 and 115C-319 to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided in GS 143-318.11 A3. To consult with an attorney employed or retained by the board in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the board, and to consult with and instruct board staff or negotiating agents concerning the position to be taken by or on behalf of the board on the particulars of the acquisition of real property for public infrastructure improvements related to South Lake Elementary School site, and to receive the board's instruction as to the position to be taken on behalf of the board in negotiation in relation thereto, and to consider confidential student information protected under GS 115C-402 and the Family Educational Privacy Rights Act 20 U.S. Code 1232G.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Sorry, we have a motion and a second to go into closed session. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. We will move into closed session. Thank you.